Welcome to the International Arbitrage 2024. And it's January and we're on the west coast of Barbados. And this video is for my international, non-US owner, operator, investors, owners of international SME businesses who want to do business in the US or want to set up trust structures in the US or raise funds in the US. I want to talk about the law of equity. The purpose of this video is really to raise the profile of the law of equity. And so let's get straight to it. The civil law countries of Latin America and many of the civil law countries in Africa do not have the law of equity. The law of equity is what we call a common law creature. And so what often happens is many clients who are coming to the US, your trusted advisors are basically, of course, lawyers and advisors who are basically, they come from your, they're civil law trained, but these are people that you know, that you trust, who do have a lot of international understanding of things or how to set up and operate across borders and what have you. But many Latin American lawyers, because they have not been trained in the traditions of the law of equity, they don't focus on it. Now, the law of equity is not beyond any Latin American lawyer because Latin American lawyers, like many lawyers in other countries, are very, very smart, technically capable people. All that is required is a little bit of commitment and focus. And they're gonna obviously, if you're moving to the US to raise funds or do business or do whatever, they don't even have to become experts in it. What they need to do is speak to their US colleagues about it. And so in the United States of America, as in the Caribbean English-speaking jurisdictions, the law of equity is the most powerful law, okay, that has to do with property rights, that has to do with protection of families, that has to do with the right to enjoy property and do things. Okay. It is the most powerful law. It is the law of charitable giving, where the wealthy people set up charities, multi-generational charities, to basically use their wealth to do good in society. That law is the law of equity. When you're using trusts are based on features of the law of equity. Okay? When you are hiring service providers in the US and in the Caribbean, making sure that there is a fiduciary duty in your contract. Fiduciary duties are not contractual law. They are based on the law of equity, which is why many service provider firms cut out or restrict or limit the fiduciary duty in the services contracts that they use to provide services to you. But what you need to do is you need to speak to your lawyers and realize that fiduciary duty and the law of equity is important for you and your family. So even if you don't fully understand the law of equity or your lawyers don't like it or fully understand it, the only thing I would say is they shouldn't dismiss it. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it doesn't work or it's not very good. This is not a debate. The facts hold that every family, every wealthy, powerful family in the United States uses the law of equity. And the law of equity is the most powerful law of its kind in the United States, apart from probably the United States Constitution. It is based on the principles of justice, fairness, what is right, and it gives the courts, judges, the ability to implement what they think is fair and right. Even sometimes if there is written express legislation, judges can sometimes find workarounds or things that work with the legislation to correct a situation or outcome. Fiduciary duty is one of the mechanisms of the law of equity. Trust law, the law of trustees, beneficiaries, and trust is another mechanism of the law of equity. There are many other mechanisms of the law of equity. Injunctions. that stop things from happening, that give people time to apply to the courts, find information, and stop certain actions from happening that are to their detriment. Things in the law of equity can prevent large institutions from taking your money or doing things that are unfair to you. The law of equity provides all of these mechanisms. So the law of equity is not something that can be brushed aside purely because your lawyer from Latin America hasn't been trained on it and doesn't like it. It's okay if he doesn't know about it. He can learn about it, obviously, online. And then when you're speaking to your lawyer, they can ask questions and say, hey, how are we covered by the law of equity given these things that we are dealing? So, for example, in the US, the new private fund advisor rules coming in 2025. A fiduciary duty is going to have to be present in the investment agreements between funds and investors. That is going to be mandated by the rules. Up until now, and for the rest of this year, funds are able to limit and restrict the fiduciary duty. This is why sometimes where you have a fund that involves holding gold or doing other things, regulated institutions use trusts as funds, as in alternative investment funds or private investment funds, because a trust, the law of equity cannot be limited or restricted. So the investors who invest in the trust, which holds the assets, whatever they are protected by the law of equity. It is the most powerful form of investment fund that you can have. So if you are an international SME, non-US person, and you are on a journey of doing business and learning how to do business in the US, then you need to use the law of equity to protect yourself and your family. It is absolutely paramount. If you have trust, then you need to use the law of equity. You need to understand about it to protect you and your family. You need to brief your kids, make sure that they are learning about it and that they know about it so they know what their rights are. They know that if certain situations arise, that they can use the law of equity to protect themselves, to protect the family. So the purpose of this video is to raise the profile with my friends on the law of equity. Go speak to, you don't need to call me or speak to me about it. Speak to the lawyers, the US lawyers that you're dealing with, or the lawyers in Canada that you're dealing with, or wherever whoever or wherever you're doing your trust or your investment business or raising funds. Get into, speak to your advisors about the law of equity and how it protects you and your family. All right.